The Republic's ATTE Walker was the backbone of the Grand Army of the Republic, especially during the opening half of the Clone Wars. It was a workhorse, a perfectly armored vehicle for use in just about any campaign. It was an essential component in Republic battle plans, and few battles, especially in the first half of the war, occurred without the use of these versatile war machines. Without them, the Clone Wars may well have been lost.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The ATTE wasn't the Republic's only ground vehicle by a long shot, not even at the start of the war. From the beginning, the Republic also had Nimbal TX-120 fighter tanks, AT-XT medium walkers, speeder bikes, SPH-AT heavy artillery, and after a few months, AT-RT scout walkers. Each of these filled a specific role, all of which very much needed filling and weren't of much use outside of them. The ATTE, however, was in a class of its own. The ATTE could be used for an incredibly diverse range of tasks, encompassing several archetypal roles at once and performing surprisingly well in all of them. The usefulness of this speaks for itself. After all, throughout the entire war, the ATT never saw major changes and remained in service more or less as it had entered it, and was only retired a few years into the reign of the Empire. Even as the Republic developed newer, seemingly more useful war machines like the Juggernaut, AT-AP, and UT-AT, the ATTE remained in service. To understand why, let's take a more in-depth look at the ATTE. The all-terrain tactical enforcer was a large, heavily armed and armored combat walker, one of the first of the infamous AT line. Developed by Rothana Heavy Engineering, a subsidiary of Kuat Drive Yards, the ATTE was designed based on a heavily armored creature native to the frozen peaks of Rothana, which had ultimately surpassed greatly in terms of formidability. It was intended as an all-purpose heavy walker, and the completed design ended up featuring 6 well-spread legs for stability, 2 heavily armored compartments for troops, 7 different heavy weapons, and very few weak spots. The first advantage of the walker was, well, that it was a walker. Its 6 legs were well spread, affording it plenty of stability. Unlike with wheels, these legs allowed the ATTE stability on uneven terrain, and unlike with repulsor lifts, they allowed the walkers to stroll right through energy shields. They even doubled as weapons, and the drivers of ATTEs were known to trample targets that came within range. These legs also had weaknesses, most notably mines and unstable terrain, but mines were rarely used by the Confederacy, and the latter problem ultimately resulted in the development of the UT-AT. The ATTE was crewed by a team of 7 clones, each of which operated a limited range of functions, which meant that the walkers were hard to fully disable or take over. The forward cockpit of each walker housed the driver and the spotter, with the former serving only to move the war machine and the latter acting as the tank commander, tasked with coordinating the rest of the team. The 5 other clones were all gunners, and they were spread throughout the walker to make its weaponry harder to disable. One was stationed in each corner of the interior, and the final gunner was stationed in an exposed turret at the top of the ATTE. The ATTE also had 2 moderately spacious interior compartments, which could each hold 10 clone troopers for deployment. Both compartments in the standard configuration were identical, having seats for troops, 2 boarding ramps, racks for DC-15 rifles, 2 gunnery stations, an emergency hatch in the roof, and a tunnel through the center section of the walker connecting them. The front compartment had the additional responsibility of manually reloading the main mass driver cannon, while the rear compartment was modular and could be replaced with a small command center or storage for speeders or AT-RTs. The latter modification offered walkers an even wider range of flexibility, as ATTEs could act as motherships of sort while scout vehicles ran ahead to fill their own roles. One of the greatest strengths of the ATTE was its heavy armor, which few enemy vehicles could penetrate. The main compartments were sheathed in unusually heavy Durasteel armor, capable of taking many shots from heavy laser cannons and remaining unbreached. Other sections were less well armored, like the central section, the cockpit, and the underbelly, with the latter 2 in particular being infamous weak spots. But these spots were very difficult to hit, and considering the ATTE's weaponry, enemies had a small chance of surviving long enough to line up a shot on them. The ATTE was armed with 6 laser cannons and a mass driver cannon, which was considered overkill for an armored vehicle of its size at the time. The laser cannons were mounted in ball turrets, 4 of which surrounded the walker's cockpit and 2 of which guarded its rear. Between them all, the ATTE had few blind spots, making flanking tactics hard to pull off successfully. While these lasers were secondary weapons, they were quite powerful, being able to quickly gun down swaths of enemy infantry and destroy light vehicles in one shot. The main weapon of the ATTE was the mass driver cannon, which was mounted in a turret at the top of the walker, giving it a 360-degree range. Though slow to fire, the mass driver had an incredible range and was exceptionally powerful. It fired high-power shells encased in energy sheaths which could pierce light shielding and pulverize nearly anything. Of all the vehicles in the Separatist arsenal, only the Geonosian super tank could stand up to the ATT mass driver fire for long, and the cannons were even capable of doing some severe damage to full-sized heavy cruisers in the right circumstances. The final advantage of the ATTE was its versatility. It could perform well in nearly every surface-based environment and even had its uses in space. It could serve as a warship-to-warship boarding craft, it could scale cliffs, and it could even be deployed on asteroids to fire on warships, as Anakin Skywalker displayed on a variety of occasions. There were few environments where the Confederacy was safe from the heavy guns of the ATTE walkers. The ATTE was much more versatile than any other vehicle in the Republic's arsenal, especially at the start of the war. Most Republic vehicles fit firmly into the category of light vehicle or heavy vehicle and had distinct limitations that they shared with the rest of the category. For example, light vehicles like the AT-RT, AT-XT, and fighter tank all had their advantages, but none of them could take all that much punishment. On the flip side, large vehicles like the Juggernaut were more heavily armored, but they were difficult to maneuver, and there were many environments in which they could not be used. The ATT is actually close to the center in this department. It's fast enough and can be used nearly anywhere, like light vehicles, but with the armor and weaponry of heavy vehicles. This is why the Republic found it so universally useful. The ATTE effectively saved the Republic in the early stages of the Clone Wars, primarily because the Separatists didn't really have any counters to it. They had vehicles that could destroy AT-ATs like Hailfire droids and homing spider droids, but the ATTE could take out either vehicle with one mass driver's shell, and none of the other Separatist vehicles stood a chance against the Walker one-on-one, not even the versatile armored assault tank. All of these advantages were what made the ATTE so utterly essential for the Republic. The Republic, at the start of the Clone Wars, had a numbers disadvantage and material shortages, as its industrial complex was bogged down by a mess of bureaucracy and corporate inefficiency. The ATTE helped alleviate this problem by being able to serve in many roles at once, which meant that Rothana could focus on churning out more of them instead of wasting materials on a larger variety of vehicle types, which is what the Confederacy did. The ATTE wasn't perfect, but it was universally effective enough to hold the line, so to speak, until the Republic got its industries in full gear. Without the ATTE, the Republic may well have been screwed. If they had tried to do what the Separatists did and put out a wider variety of vehicles, then they would have been mauled in several crucial battles, as Republic material shortages meant that there would be fewer vehicles for each role, and no vehicle that would have been able to serve more than a few roles at once. The Confederacy's numbers advantage would have been the deciding factor in vehicle-heavy battles as a result, especially since their war machines were better tested and their strengths and weaknesses were well known. As it is, the Republic barely held back the tide of the Confederacy in the first half of the war, and if this crucial piece of that effort was removed, it wouldn't have done nearly as well. All of this begs one question though. If the ATTE was so useful, then why did the Empire retire it? That is, after all, what happened. The ATTE remained in full service only until the end of the reconquest of the Rim, the Empire's war on the Separatist holdouts that lasted for 2 years after the end of the Clone Wars. After that, those ATTEs that weren't retired outright were stuck in support roles on backwater planets in the Outer Rim, at most serving as backup for the Imperial Juggernauts and newer Walker models. This was because, to put it simply, the Empire was fighting a different war. The ATTE was a machine of the Clone Wars, where large-scale ground battles, massive armies, and heavy vehicles were the norm. After the Separatist holdouts were disposed of, the battles the Empire fought became against smaller, faster rebel cells, who fought in a very different way. They were able to more easily exploit the weaknesses of the ATTE due to how their armies worked, and for the same reason the ATTE was much less effective against them. Furthermore, the roles in which the ATTE continued to be useful were filled by a different war machine, the AT-AT, which was more powerful and more useful for fighting the Galactic Civil War. So that's the story of the ATTE of sorts, and why it was so essential to the Republic war effort during the Clone Wars. But what do you think? Do you think there's a vehicle, Republic or Imperial, that surpasses the ATTE? And if so, why? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And just before you go guys, you know the drill, make sure you check out all the links in the description below if you want to join the wider Geetsly's network on our Discord and our gaming platforms. And if you want to support the videos more than you already are, please make sure you check out the Patreon. And I want to thank all 14 patrons at the moment. You guys really help increase the quality and quantity of the work we do here on the channel. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.